on this week's episode of TalkStone.
TalkStone is back.
We wrap up the HCT qualifiers and the winter playoffs.
TalkStone is back.
TalkStone is back.
And as always, we present this week's well-played moment and my favorite segment, Meme History.
Everybody, get in here. Let's break down all the esports action. Welcome to TalkStone, your premier source for all things competitive Hearthstone news and analysis. My name is Frodan.
And I'm TJ.
And it's been a hot minute. In fact, we haven't had TalkStone all year, TJ.
Hey, that's right.
It's been a long time coming. Hope you guys had a great holiday and a happy new year. I certainly did. I was at the All-Stars event in Taiwan with TJ, where we got to witness one of the most hilarious endings to a game I've ever had the pleasure of casting, with Gia versus Fish.
Oh, I thought you were referring to mine and your show match.
I didn't cast that one. I played it. But we also did one of the best entrances and ceremonies that will live in Hearthstone infamy.
Yeah, it was a very fun event, and it's kind of bizarre because usually we get into record talks and I'd be like, this is cool. I get to spend time with Dan. I get to banter with Dan a little bit, but now Dan and I we're kind of a thing. We're back casting with each other a little bit.
We're like public now. We're official.
Yeah, we are official.
It's not like Facebook status worthy yet, but we'll work up to that.
It's complicated.
TJ and I have been casting a lot recently. It's been really fun. It kind of reminds me just of like the old days where we would just mess around on like the Legendary series and talk about everything except Hearthstone.
Mm-hmm.
So I figured we'd carry that over to TalkStone today. We could talk about everything but the game. But that's not what they brought us here to do, and I'll get fired. They'll probably edit it out anyways. So let's go ahead and jump directly into HCT and everything about competitive Hearthstone. First thing we want to do, before we get too deep into what happened at playoffs the past few weekends in January, we want to acknowledge all of the hard work in 2018 for the Year of the Raven and congratulate all the players who were able to earn the title of Hearthstone Master from 1 to 3 stars. And TJ, we ended up having 2 players who managed to cross that threshold of 3-star Masters.
Yeah, Hunter Ace and Just Sayin. Hunter Ace was the first player to hit it, and actually he was asking us if we could make a 4-star Master because he wanted something to work towards once he hit 3-star.
I mean, Look, the 1-star Master started at 150, then it was 175, and then it was 200. So if it was 225 at 4-star Masters, Hunter Ace would have also cleared that too, because he ended at 231. This kid's nuts.
And that's if he stopped there. If we had added a 4-star and a 5-star, he probably would have tried harder those last couple seasons.
Yeah.
Maybe even would have reached that 250. But Just Saying, barely under the wire, hit 200 points, but an incredible achievement because the point threshold was set quite high, and players were even saying at the beginning of the season, 3-star Master is impossible. Mm-hmm. Nobody will ever get there. And 2 players did, and probably the points go to show it. The 2, by far, the most consistent players in all across HCT throughout 2018.
It's also the level of separation between Hunter Ace and number 2. You have Phenomeno and Seiko. Both players are at the cusp, just under 200 points. Actually, my heart goes out to both these guys because they had the opportunity to cross into 3-star Master from playoffs, but I think Sego ended literally at 199 points. Yeah. It's like, that's as soul-crushing as it gets, But at the same time, he's an honorary member of the 3-star Masters. However, we do have to separate to just show how much dominance Hunter Ace had over Europe. Europe is considered by many to be the #1 region in Hearthstone in terms of its competition and depth of the field, and yet Hunter Ace is a solid 30-plus points over second place, and then second to 5th is all separated by 3 or 4 points. So there's a clear tier, the Hunter Ace tier, in terms of results and consistency, and then everyone else. But, it's not just about Hunter Ace and Sand, Muzzy, Fino, Seiko, and Yarla, who's also a very underrated player from Europe. Those are all the 2- and 3-star Masters. The 1-star Masters actually has a great collection of players as well. You have Tyler at the very head of the 1-star Masters, who's leading all of Asia Pacific. He has earned a World Championship spot. And then number 2 in that region is Blood Trail, who, guess what, also top forward at the Fall Championships, and also got a World Championship spot. So Asia Pacific really came out swinging with some of their players this year as well.
Yeah, and then the rounding off that 1-star list, which has 11 players, we have Kalax, Sohyun, Shaxi, Rivius, Boston, Monsanto, Board Control, Swids, and Casey. So a lot of Europeans in that list. But that makes sense because the threshold for qualifying for playoffs at top 64 was higher for Europe. More players across the board, but definitely a big achievement for any player that was able to reach any tier of the Masters system. And we thought we'd talk about it at least for a little bit, just because this is our first episode of 2019. We didn't even get to break it down last year. So
that's right.
Big congratulations to all those players.
Yeah, and we also want to acknowledge the teams that finished in the team standings and earned money as well. So Team Genji, actually I believe it's Team Genji Blue, because they had 2 squads, were able to take the #1 spot. And that was, I believe, Monsanto Swids and Cruz. So congratulations to them for being able to put on a great Season 3. Templestorm comes in at #2, but I was also told by Templestorm that as soon as Muzzy and Sam both qualified for Worlds, they took it off the gas pedal a lot. They're like, we're not going to need more tour stops. We don't even need another ladder season of finishes, because they knew that mathematically they had that. So, Tempostorm, relaxing, finishes very comfortably at #2 at 197 points. And Nordavin and Complexity finished out very close at 180 and 179 points, 3rd and 4th place respectively. By the way, there are some ways for those Masters and whatnot in terms of the points to change depending on the transitional season. This was explained at the end of 2018. So that's why some people are wondering, why are the points decided for World Championships, but then people are getting points for Masters tier? So that there's a little bit of separation with that.
Yeah, but the transitional period, the points earned during that won't award you with the title of 3-star, 2-star, 1-star Master. It just awards you with some of the benefits that were announced in the blog post, the perks. Yeah. So while players still have an ability to earn points during that transitional season, they will never, ever be able to earn 1-star, 2-star, or 3-star Master status. Just the additional perks that, of course, we announced. But one of the coolest stories is that Bloodyface has an opportunity to earn enough points to hit the new transitional season lower tier of 125 points, but only if he wins the Winter Championship.
Okay.
So it's extra motivation.
He got 2nd last time, so there's only one step up that ladder. Also, spoiler alert, because we didn't actually go in depth with the results, but you are correct. Bloodyface has qualified. We'll talk a little bit more about that in the coming minutes. Actually, why don't we just go ahead and jump into the playoffs and talk about some of the things that we were expecting going into this season. I think a lot of people were curious about how the bounce patch that nerfed Druid, that nuked Druid from orbit, to say the least. Nourish and Wild Growth got hit. Level Up got nerfed from 5 mana to 6 mana, so Odd Paladin just can't play it anymore unless they want to lose that Baku synergy. And then we lost a few other things that people were talking about, but I think the big prominent thing, Serenite Chain Gang being able to only copy itself and not actually use its battle cry for Shuttle Walk was also a big deal, and I think Shaman took a big hit. So I think a lot of people going into this winter playoffs had, of course, the mind that there was only 4 spots left for their region. They really want to get a chance for the World Champion, for the Winter Championship into the World Championship qualifier spot. But I also was looking forward to seeing how the meta would develop, TJ. So seeing how everything has played out, what are some of the key stories that you saw after playoffs was over?
I think the biggest story is just the story of returning players. And when we get to each individual region, we'll dive into the meta changes, which were also cool. But seeing 7 out of the 16 players that are going to the Winter Championship from all 4 regions qualifying systems is just crazy. Almost half the field competed already in championships. And on top of that, 4 of the players competing at Winter Championships are already qualified for the World Championship.
That's right. That's right.
Which makes it even more interesting because we could have a lot more matches to cast potentially during the Winter Championship because of tiebreakers. Because if 1 or more of the 4 players that are already qualified to Worlds make it to top 4 at Winter Championships, because those top 4 spots have Worlds tickets associated with them, we have to do tiebreakers for 5th through 8th to determine who will get those spots at Worlds.
Yeah. And it could go down really deep because we have Bloodyface from America, who is qualified based off getting 2nd in the Fall Championship. Bunny Hopper and Viper. Bunny Hopper won the Winter Championship, and Viper got to the top 4, where it was a really iconic match that they had in the semifinals. And then Tyler's the #1 points leader for Asia Pacific, which also means that if he were to get to the top 4, his spot as the regional point leader is given to the next highest player, which is Blood Trail.
Blood Trail.
But Blood Trail also is qualified for the World Championship, so the 3rd highest point earner, which happens to be Rivius, who has also made a championship appearance, and I don't think anybody would contest whether or not he belongs to hang with the top players. So, if you're a Tyler fan, or if you are a Rivius fan, you are really hoping that Tyler does well in the Winter Championship. So definitely a lot to pay attention to, but yes, the level of consistency is phenomenal. 4 players from the World Championship have made it making it to the Winter Championship. 7 players are returning from previous championships. We had 4 from summer and 3 from the fall, because we're counting Tai Miao and Lion King, who made it previously. In fact, why don't we go ahead and talk about China qualifiers? China's still, kind of a region that's a little bit isolated from the rest of the English-speaking community, or just from the rest of the world, really. But you got to look at Lion King, Tai Miao, Yue Ying, and Jing. Now, Yue Ying and Jing, both are players we don't know too much about. But Tai Miao, we saw him previously, and I thought he played very well. Out of all the Chinese players, I think he played the best in the previous championship. And then Lion King, who brings bold strategies, and I think it was highlighted by his popularization of the Holy Wrath Paladin, TJ. We talked about this a couple times on the broadcast, but for people who don't know, Lion King went really far and deep and won with Holy Wrath OTK Paladin, which people thought was kind of a joke and a meme, but then people started playing more with it, and then it became one of the most popular decks by week 2 of the playoffs.
Yeah, it was. It's pretty insane, and Lion King within the Chinese Hearthstone community is known for innovative deck building. He was also one of the players that popularized the Worgen OTK warrior back in the day, and just kind of known for his off-the-wall deck building. And we've kind of seen that even at, I can't remember any specifics, but if you just look back at his lineup from Fall Championship, he even had like a few cards or a few little strategies that were unique, even if his archetypes were the same. So Lion King, definitely an interesting player to watch. And since we talked a lot in 2018 about Masters and about Hunter Ace and Saiyan and their consistency within tour stops and HCT, Lion King is also should be in that conversation, even though us in the West, we don't have as good of a view of him as the Chinese community does. But he's been back-to-back championships now. He's been a champion in Gold Series multiple times, and I think Lion King should be a player to watch. And, of course, we also have to talk about just the fact that China hasn't done well in HCT in the past, 2 years.
Well, I mean, if you look at the World Championship Global Finals, Jason Zhou got to the semifinals twice, which is, that's as good as it gets, really, in terms of consistency. Getting to 3rd place, effectively, for 2 years in a row. I mean, we haven't seen Jason Zhou Omega Zero in quite some time, but it's largely because I think that there's just new blood rising up. I think those guys have done it and been there, so they're getting a little bit complacent and laid back with whether or not they care about results as much. And then you have Tai Miao and Xiao Ti and Lion King. I think this is their year where how they've been rising up and staying on the grind. You kind of mentioned that Lion King's qualified like half a dozen times by now. Tai Miao is doing really well. And also what I love, too, about this new wave of Chinese players is that they're really trying to connect to the English audience. Xiao Ti and Tai Miao post on Twitter and tweet in English and meme and post their deck lists in English, which I'm really grateful for because I feel like I know Hearthstone, but then when they post deck lists in a different language, I'm like, what is this card? I have no idea. Xiao Ti is the #1 points leader for China, so he is qualified for the World Championship. So we don't really have to see him this season, but I want to see if Lion King and Tai Miao can really hold it, or perhaps Yue Ying, who's relatively new, who made his first appearance last year in 2017 or previous year, competitive year in 2017. But, I heard that he's a very emotive player. So I'm looking forward to seeing, if this player's be one that's entertaining to watch, kind of like an Aku Maker or like a Sintolo type.
Yeah, we got some notes from the Blizzard China office who gave us some info on the players that we weren't as familiar with qualified from China, mostly Jing and Yu Ying. And Yu Ying, we've also been told that he's a very good singer.
That's cool because his name, if you switch around, Yingyue, is actually music in Chinese, or if you pronounce it that way.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe the opposite side is maybe he's backwards at music. I don't know, but it's a little pun that I think maybe that makes sense. But I don't actually see the character transcribed or written out, so I don't know what it actually means. But in terms of its phonetic spell, it's a little play on words, if you will. So maybe he's good at singing. Maybe he'll do something fun for the piece. Maybe if he wins, he can be on stage and just start doing some karaoke. I would love that.
Would you do a duet with him?
Oh yeah. If Yue Ying is able to win and he's willing to sing, I'll be willing to duet with him. I am not known for singing. I got cut from choir when I was 11 years old.
You can't even get cut from choir. They let everybody in.
And I lived through that. You very much can get cut from choir because I did not fit any of their roles. At least that's what they said.
Are you a rich baritone, Dan?
I wish. Let's talk a little bit about the rest of the regions here. We started off with Europe in Week 1. The players that qualified were Viper and Bunny Hopper, as mentioned. 2 players who qualified for the World Championship back in the summer season. Mm-hmm. And both Germans. In fact, one thing that we pointed out of the 12 players that were sent to championship from Europe this year, 6 of them were German. 4 of them were the same players, Viper and Bunny Hopper twice. And then we had Moyen and Sintelol in the fall season.
Yeah.
Germany is a country that has just been very good at competitive games for, since the beginning of esports, going back to the 90s or even earlier before that. But it's just not a country that we ever really considered to be one of the powerhouses in Hearthstone, even though they've been very consistent for so many years. I mean, it actually just speaks so much about German culture and their consistency and their excellence, and yet we kind of ignore it and take it for granted, so to speak. I think that's just very, German, both in a cultural way and, how we identify it, but also in Hearthstone, which is really funny. Because we usually pay attention to, CIS, like Ukraine with Kolento and Aria for years, or Russia and Pavel and all those really powerful players from there, and then or maybe the Nordic region or Scandinavian, Hunter Ace or Oskaka from Sweden and all these other players. But we kind of ignore Central Europe just as being a very good region in Hearthstone, because they make up the majority of the intense or the very strong player base.
Yeah, even Casey almost qualified.
That's right, Casey.
One of the top point earners from Europe, also a German player. So
maybe it makes sense because Bunny Hopper also spent his years studying a PhD in Norway, which is where Hunter Ace is from, and I heard that they have some good Hearthstone players there too.
And then he brought their practice regimens back.
To Germany, so he has the best of both worlds. I don't know. Maybe this guy understands something, and we don't. Let's talk about Faeli a little bit. Man, this kid had some amazing runs in the past, and he'd always have a problem getting through the single eliminate or the bracket stage.
Yes.
He would always do really well in Swiss and then falter at the final doorstep every single time. And I felt like it was overdue because, he's put in a ton of work. His play looks very strong technically. And I was always surprised that he just never had that breakthrough. But that's that's a story that we've heard a lot of times. We've had players like Oskaka and Pavel, world champions, have that problem. I casted so many qualifiers back in 2014 and DreamHacks and all these other events in 2015, where Oskaka was one round away from going to a top 8 or going through a Swiss bracket. And then Pavel, of course, he had one of the most iconic misplays of all time, where he could have qualified for the World Championship, but he messed up against a life coach with his Sylvanas and Dr. Boom interaction. So, it's really fun to see players who are so close and they're knocking on the door, but they don't give up, TJ. And they make that breakthrough. So I'm looking to see if Faeli, he's one of my players to watch for the Winter Championship.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing Faeli as well, and I think that I don't think his work here is done yet. I think that his ultimate goal is to qualify for the World Championship, and Winter Champs is going to be a big deal for him, because while qualifying to Winter is cool, and he's got that breakthrough, he's had, like you mentioned, struggles in playoffs before, struggles to get past the finish line. He's also, just in big tournaments, struggled to get that big win. He finished top 4 in 4 playoffs this year. He finished 3rd, 4th at 2 DreamHacks, and then a 2nd place at both Oslo and Singapore. So he's been so close before, but hasn't been across the full finish line yet. And I think World Championships and qualifying to the World Championships would be at least the first finish line for him. There's another finish line 10 yards past that first finish line that's winning the World Championships. but he'd be happy getting across the finish line first.
Now, let's talk about the last player, ThunderUp.
Okay.
ThunderUp from Turkey. Don't know too much about his accolades as a player besides playoffs. I remember seeing him make a deep run in even the previous season for HCT Playoffs back in fall. And Turkey is just a country that we don't know again too much about, and I like that. I don't want just the players that we usually see, because if you see the same faces all the time, as much as it's exciting to see your favorite players, part of the charm of Hearthstone and even just card games in general is that anybody can challenge the throne. As many people say, any given Sunday. And that's kind of what makes it really exciting. I want to see if a player from a region that we don't really know too much, which is the Middle East, kind of that Eurasian place, and then from Turkey that we don't see very often, be able to challenge the best of the best, which is going to be what's coming up here. I mean, that was the same with like Latin America, for example. Like, we didn't really know too much from like Empanizado when he was from Mexico, or Diego Diaz from Brazil, and they were able to come, and I think that they can really hang with all of them. So don't sleep on ThunderUp. I mean, he might be a player that's able to make a miraculous run and inspire a lot of people to follow after him. Now over to Americas, we have Bobby X, Noblord, Bloodyface, and Ike. Bloodyface, the second place finisher for the fall season, so he's already World Championship bound, as TJ mentioned before. Should he be able to win the Winter Championship, he will also earn that transitional season benefits of being invited next year to a live global event. Noblord, a player that's competed a lot in TESPA. He's also kind of got his little, Chalky-esque resume where Noblord loves competing just in hardcore Hearthstone events all the time. So Noblord competed in a lot of the Twitch events that I put on for like the Hearthstone Gold Rush or the Dungeon Run Challenge, and he's also gotten deep in all of those events. So this guy has just a sharp mind for the game, and more importantly, people rely upon him as a practice partner, as a think tank member of like a lot of groups. He's brilliant, and I'm a big fan of Noblord. I like his attitude a lot. I even just like the small things that he does. Like Noblord talks about hydration a lot and how he doesn't think that you can play Hearthstone competitively unless you're drinking lots of water.
Yeah.
And it's just like the small stuff like that, I think, gives you like that 0.5 to 1% edge every single time. And if you just keep adding that up, I mean, that's how you get to be an elite player in Hearthstone, by getting those small percentages every single time and not ignoring it. And I think it just shows, too, but the fact that Bloodyface and Noblord, they both brought no hunters in their lineup. They brought druids instead. Hakar, Fatigue, Mill Druid, to try and deck out as fast as you can, King Togwoggle, and then the Hakar shuffles Corrupted Bloods over and over and deals something like 70 damage. And the reason why is because everyone was bringing aggressive decks. And so controlled decks and lineups that Viper and Bunny Hopper brought killed that. So then in week 2, everyone brought control decks, and then combo lineups like Noblord and Bloodyface end up destroying everything. Although what's funny and a nice asterisk to that is Ike end up playing like a really powerful aggressive lineup, because everyone was bringing the combo lineups that were winning. It turns out when you bring aggro, it beats the combo because you give him no time to draw. And the funny thing on top of it all is that Ike told me that he submitted 10 cards wrong. He said he came up with a deck list lineup that he really liked, except a lot of the small things like, oh, do I want to play Cobalt Scalebanes? No, I think I want to play, a little bit more aggressive tools that are faster as opposed to these 5-mana minions. But because his lineup was so naturally powerful against these combo strategies, he just got there anyways. He's like, well, yeah, actually, everyone's playing slow decks, so why not play a 5/5 dragon that ends up, buffing my other board? And that's what helped him get over the edge. So it wasn't just pure, unadulterated combo lineups that were just destroying everything. There was definitely a lot of variety in Americas for week 2.
And on that Ike story, I even kind of said to other people on the Hearthstone Esports team when that whole thing was going down, where Ike couldn't submit at the last minute his new updated lineups.
Right.
I looked at them side by side, and then I looked at the field of decks, and I said, I don't think he even wants to submit these updated lineups. I think he just wants to keep with his old lineup.
Exactly.
And it turns out it worked out. He even tweeted, he said, I'm playing an unoptimal list, but I'm going to give it my best shot anyway. And he qualified. So
enough. Even the story behind Ike, too. He posted a tweet longer about what Hearthstone means to me after he qualified. And he was mentioning that during his interview process when we talked to him on camera, TJ, he didn't feel like he communicated enough just how important this victory was to him, because there was a very emotional time when he won. Because when you win, all you're thinking about is like, oh my gosh, I did it. I don't know what to think. Like I can't believe I did it. Relief, excitement, whatnot. But a moment of reflection came up afterwards, and Ike started talking about some of the medical history that he has, where he's diagnosed with a pretty uncommon condition that kind of forces him to get a lot of surgery on his legs all the time. But throughout all the process where he felt really down about his health, he stuck with it and really committed to Hearthstone and trying to be the best player he can. And that's one of the beauties about not just Hearthstone, but just gaming as a whole. These things happen, as many people would say, you just have to roll with the punches. But, the thing about esports and gaming that makes it so special is that even despite the fact we can't be on our feet all the time or jumping and running and whatnot, we can still compete and really try to exercise with, our minds. And I think that's so cool that Ike was able to persevere and overcome, which is kind of a theme for some of these players as we transition to Asia Pacific, DJ. But I do want to give a shout out to Ike. That mental resilience and his consistency and his dedication really paid off. So shout out to him.
Yeah, also got a big support system behind him as well. Ike has been a player that's helped a lot of other players make it to championship level events. So very cool to see Ike, and I'm looking forward to getting to interview him a little bit more in depth once he gets here for winter.
That's right.
But also last player for America's Bobby X.
Yep.
From
He's a
Canada.
dark horse. We have one for each region. He is the dark horse for this event.
Yep.
And I want to see if Bobby X can challenge. And I think he's got some solid stuff. I don't really see too many mistakes from him. He was also a good deck player. And, that just shows that he has really strong understanding of fundamentals in Hearthstone. And that goes a very long way. Some people get really fancy with all these kinds of lineups. I mean, all three of the other players are known for being very fancy, like Nobbler and Bloodyface with their weird, elaborate combo lineups, and Ike just likes to play like his weird tempo shutter walk shaman stuff. Bobby X just going to get there, and we've seen a lot of players use that mentality and do very well in competitive Hearthstone. So
he did have Quest Rogue, which was an indication of maybe his practice with Tare. But
that's true.
The one funny thing about Bobby X was that to start this story off, Admirable and Sottle were paired together as casters for the first time at the beginning of playoffs. And Admirable does not feel comfortable with winners' interviews yet for players once they qualify for championships. He's very vocal about it. He's always relied on me to ask the questions, which I get it. I like asking questions, and I don't have to do it anymore. Thanks, Dan. But Bobby X made Admirable's job very easy because during his winner interview, without being prompted, just went on a rant, an emotional speech, and just basically spat out every thought that was in his head at the time. And Dan and I were waiting off camera because we were casting the next match right after that. And we can't hear anything because there's no sound when we're waiting right off stage. We can just see the current casters and the screen. And so Dan and I are just Dan's got his notes. We're just waiting up there, getting ready to cast, and we're just sitting there for like 10 minutes.
While
and the only thing we can see is Admirable and Sottle staring at the monitor, and in the far monitor with the broadcast being played, just Bobby X talking.
Good. Honestly, I want more Hearthstone players to be more communicative about their journey. I mean, a lot of these players, they don't know what to say when they qualify, so they have to simplify it through like a couple sentences like, well, I prepped really hard, and things went my way. And I'm like,
I'm speechless.
Come on, man. You're selling yourself short, and you're making the rest of us look bad, dude. Come on, So good on Bobby X, and I hope he's that vocal when he makes it to the championship because that's very relatable, And I think the one thing takeaway is that he worked really hard for it. And, I mean, almost every player at this stage of competitive Hearthstone has worked really hard and will earn their spot. I mean, I don't think there's any slackers that are coming through if they qualify for the Winter Championship.
Yeah, I agree.
With that, let's move on to Asia Pacific. We have three players that you most likely have heard of. Tansoku. Tansoku is back.
He is back.
He's back again, and this is one of your favorite players, TJ. We made this little joke behind the scenes with the casters that there are players that for some reason, we always pick in predictions.
Yes.
Raven loves to pick Surrender, although he didn't pick Surrender this season. Admirable loves to pick Jinsu, which he did pick. And assuming you weren't going to meme Subtle and the rest of the casters and the entire Hearthstone community, I seriously thought you were going to pick Tansoku.
I was going to
pick him like 4 times or something.
Yeah, I was going to pick Tansoku even back in the preliminaries days, before playoffs even existed.
Yeah.
I always put Tansoku on the chalkboard. It was kind of a farce why I chose him to begin with. It's because I used to think that he was a control lover of sorts, specifically control warrior. And when he came to the previous championship, he informed us that that was not the case, that he did not like playing control, but he would suck it up and play it if he thought it was good. He was an aggro player at heart, loved playing aggro, and in this playoffs, he went back to his roots. He played an aggressive lineup, and it worked out really well. He was the top Swiss performer, had a decent road to get there to the championships once he made into the top 8, winning out in the decider match. And just a genuine guy. He is also a big fan of me. I told this story on an episode of TalkStone last year. I don't know if he still has this in his possession, but I did sign in permanent marker the back of his phone.
Nice.
So I hope that he brings that with him, even if he doesn't use that phone anymore. If he still has it as a keepsake, and we'll bring it, and I can sign it again, or I can sign his new phone,
TJ,
whatever he wants.
He already pawned it off and sold it. For 2x the value. So
I don't think it's worth that
him
much. I honestly don't think it's worth anywhere near that much.
It lost a lot of value.
Yeah, it was a nice phone, and I ruined it by writing my name on it. So,
yeah, we've never had a Japanese player at the World Championship, have we? We had last year it was Samuel Tao and Tom and Surrender as like the Asia Pacific guys. So Tyler, who also qualified, by the way, and we'll talk about it in just a second. Tyler and Blood Trail are the only APAC reps that are qualified for Worlds this year. And Tansoku can not only be a person that joins that, but groundbreaking for his country and region, because Japan has just been on the constant come up since so 2016 when we first saw Matsun and and it went to like Wuya and all these other Japanese players, Glory and all these players. I want to see them continue to have that consistency because the Japanese, they are very vocal about how they inspire each other. In the meantime, we also have another Korean player go through in Definition. He's the dark horse. We mentioned that there's one per region that's going through right now. Definition I don't know too much about, but I think what's important to know is that we've always had Korean players at the World Championship, and this is their last chance, to get a Korean player on stage. 2 years in a row it was Kranich, then we have Surrendered, going far, and we'll see if that's able to keep up in the 2018/2019 year of the Raven Championship.
Looking forward to it. And to make a quick correction on what you said earlier. We have actually had a Japanese player make it to the top 4 of a Hearthstone World Championship with Kano in 2015.
Oh, you're right. I actually forgot about that.
Yeah.
I apologize.
He lost to Hot Form in the semifinals. It's often that World Championship is overshadowed, all of it, almost entirely, by the semifinals between Tyson Osaka.
Wow, I can't
Nobody
believe I
even
forgot
really
that.
paid
You are
attention to
completely
the
right.
second semifinal because everybody was so hyped up about the Tyson versus Osaka match. But Kano didn't make it there. But that's the furthest a Japanese player has ever made, which is pretty far.
It is far.
But it was a long time ago, and the whole system's changed since then. The way you qualify, the caliber of play in general, where the best play of the entire year was someone pinging their own face, which was in the Taiso Skaka series in the Freeze Mage Mirror.
That's right.
But, yeah, I think Tansoku could be the next Kano, so to speak.
Hopefully. I mean, that's been several years now. Since we've seen that run.
Almost 4 years.
Yeah. We'll see if he's able to keep that up. Last player is Roger from Taiwan. We had Taiwanese players do very well in HCT. There's a lot of good players that come out from Taiwan in general. And I think, what's funny is that Roger, kind of like a lot of other players, has transitioned into being mainly a streamer. So that's what he's really known for these days. He's like, I think, the biggest Taiwanese streamer when Tom isn't like dedicating full time to Hearthstone in terms of streaming, creating content. So I'm sure the fans will come out in full force to support him, at least from the Taiwan side. And we'll see what he's got against the rest of the world here, because it's been a hot minute since I've seen Roger compete globally. You know, I've seen him, you know, compete online or play in these playoffs. But the last time I remember him playing something like this big that wasn't like HGG related was, I think, like the VIA Game House Cup, like back in like 2015 or something. So it's been
the days of the House Cups, Dan.
They were really fun.
Oh, do I miss it?
I think we were like in a castle in Romania where like it was like Dracula's castle, but it was back from like the 16th or 17th century, so every door was like 4 feet tall so we had to duck through because humans were really short back then apparently.
They had those player intros that were just them doing random things around the castle.
And Orange got attacked by a literal bat.
A bat?
Yeah. And
oh, you mean a vampire in bat form?
Yeah, and people were like saying like, "Wow, Firebat really trying to mess with tournament integrity or something." I don't know. And I remember it was like the series went really long because it was Strifeco versus Life Coach for the finals, and then Life Coach played so that Strifeco missed his flight, and then he lost anyways. So good times. I think there's a lot of fun stuff coming out from here, but there's also a lot of emotional. I don't know really how to describe it. It was a really big win, I think, just for Hearthstone players around the world when Tyler was able to qualify as the last spot here in Asia Pacific. Tyler, for people who don't know, has been documenting his father's health problems on Twitter for the past 7-8 weeks or so. And Tyler originally moved back to Vietnam to primarily be with family. A lot of people kind of meme him saying, "Oh, you're leaving the hardest region to go play in the easiest region." But that wasn't exactly the case. He wanted to really go home and be around his loved ones. And, you can see how much that meant to him when he was literally on social media begging for anybody that knew anything about his father's health problems to consult him. He was looking for doctors online and asking people to retweet and share so he can get his father's help. And then 2 weeks ago, right before the playoffs, his father ended up passing away, unfortunately. And, Tyler had every excuse in the book. We were saying this on broadcast. He had every reason to not show up, take some time to mourn, separate yourself from things, and get some distance and clarity. But instead, his family encouraged him, and apparently his father's dying wish was that he would continue to pursue his passions and to continue to be a champion. And I think that's just... look, I've said this story like 4 or 5 times now, and it still gets me emotional just thinking about it because it's a very touching story. I'm pretty sure our producer and all the people that create content and interviews at the Winter Championship are like, yes, finally, we have like a really powerful story, not from like a selfish point of view, but just like this is the kind of stories that they want to tell for the Hearthstone Championship Tour. And I think Tyler is so inspiring, even if he doesn't do well at the Winter Championship, and even if he doesn't become the World Championship for the Year of the Raven. This guy has the heart of one, and I respect the hell out of this guy.
Yeah, and one of the things that stood out to me always from the first time I met Tyler was that he's just so friendly, and he brings other people out of their shell too, right? You don't often see Sottle get very emotional unless it's getting angry at a fighting game on social media.
Or in the back room, and TJ's laughing at him. Me and Sottle sometimes play fighting games in the backstage, and TJ's just pointing over shoulders like, "You're pressing buttons, Sottle?" Yeah? You're doing the thing?
Yeah.
Oh, he did the thing. And then Sottle's just like, "Shut up, TJ!" like while he's losing in rounds.
He's very good at ignoring me, and also I've become very familiar with one particular finger of Sottle.
You're a bully, dude. You just like to bully Sottle a lot.
I do, but
great.
He's fun.
It's great because Sottle's usually the bully. He's the one that's kind of poking fun at Raven.
Exactly.
And the rest of us.
Which is even more impressive when someone like Tyler can warm Sottle's cold heart enough to make him come out on Twitter and show his support for him. Not even as a Hearthstone player, but just as a person. So very happy for Tyler. And I honestly hope he does well. He's already at the World Championship.
Right,
so,
he didn't even have to play. Like that's why I was saying he had every reason. Like he was already World Championship bound, so he could have just been like the rest of everyone else. Like I'm just gonna take a season easy. Like maybe even play some meme decks like Viper and just like, I have a creative idea. Maybe I'll just mess around and see how far I can go with a cool idea. No, this guy took it very seriously. Played well. I think his technical play was still very solid, and I think that just sets the stage for a fantastic field of 16. As you mentioned, 7 players having championship experience making a return just in this year alone. And then you also have 4 players who are world championship bound, and then a lot of you have a handful of underdogs and a handful of consistent players. We'll find out. I'm really excited. Championship starts at the end of February.
Mm-hmm.
So, 3 to 4 weeks from now, TJ, is going to come up real fast. And then we take the top 4 players, or the top 4 players that aren't World Championship qualified, and we'll give away the last spots. We've been improperly saying last call points for so long now in Hearthstone, but this is the last call, seriously, for the year of the Raven.
It is. And Dan, as we wrap up talking about playoffs, I do want to mention one thing, and that's that it seems like this is the season of sentimental stories. And I also think that playoffs kind of coming to a close, being the end of this HCT era, since we're moving on to a new system, it is kind of sentimental for us casters and also the production crew that got to work on playoffs for some time, because it's been a challenge. Playoffs is a crazy
it's
beast.
A massive undertaking.
It's multiple venues across the world with often almost 100 players being coordinated and broadcast all at once with multiple matches happening simultaneously. It's a big effort, and I think most of all the casters that currently cast playoffs got their start in some form or another from playoffs. Like Soddle and Raven got their start from So You Think You Can Cast.
Right.
Back in the day, in like 2015, they cast their first playoff. Even myself, playoffs was a big deal for me when I first started casting it, because before that it was just Legendary Series and Collegiate. And so
Honorable made his casting come back through playoffs too.
He did.
He was competing. Remember in 2016, Honorable was like one series away from going to the Winter Championship.
And the funny thing is, because the person that beat him didn't speak English, which was Al Sky High, we interviewed Admirable after he lost, which is unprecedented.
Like, why would you interview me?
You never interview someone after they lose. And we did, because we were trying to scramble for an interview. We needed time to fill content. And it was one of the best. It would have been one of the best interviews, but it's one of the best losers interviews and the only one. So I guess it's also the worst of all time. And I think that interview was what got him back into casting. People were like, this guy can talk.
Yeah.
And he's got a nice beard. But it was so cool, and I think, again, something that can warm Soddle's cold heart. He made a post on Twitter about what Hearthstone meant to him and what playoffs also meant to him, and it was really cool to read, because it just – I've been close to all you guys, all the casters, for some time, and I'm excited for what's going to come, but seeing this as the last playoffs, it is a little bit sentimental. And a little bit sad to see it come to a close, but excited for what the future holds.
Yeah, Soddle doesn't really open up very much, so he's a very private person. Rarely even hangs out with us. He likes to go home or go to his hotel room and play more Hearthstone.
So do I, though.
But really respect what he's able to put out there. So check out his tweet longer if you want. It's just like his story of his life. Very, very touching, and that just sets the stage for an awesome Winter Championship and also a World Championship in Taiwan later this year. So with these 16 players and our wonderful casters and all the sentimentalism, TJ, going into this season of Winter, I'm really excited not only for the next coming months, but the next few months, because the World Championships, which is happening in Taiwan, is going to be great. If you guys are going to get a chance to check out that trailer, here it is now. Welcome back, everyone, to TalkStone. Hope you guys are looking forward to that. Taipei is awesome. Love the food and the shopping. And also, I got to experience New Year's in Taipei 101 on the 90th floor. So Ray from Blizzard took us up there and got to watch all the explosions and stuff. And it was a weekend to remember. So I'm looking forward to going back. And we're going to transition to a couple of fun segments that we usually do here in TalkStone.
And now it's time for the well-played moment.
I was just about to say that.
Dan, I forgot to use my prop. All right. Dan, can you start over for me, please? Just talk about anything. I'll interrupt you.
All right. Welcome back, everyone.
And now it's time for the well-played moment. Look, I'm saying it. It's my speech bubble.
Mhm.
So what well-played moment do we have in store today for us, Dan?
Today we have a fun interaction between Tundra Rhino and a Hexed Frog. Saihodo was able to use it to spot a lethal after summoning the Tundra Rhino with his Frostmourne swing. 'Cause he's been playing against Deathstalker Rexar for a bit and trying to see if he can find a way to capitalize on utilizing the Frostmourne. And it was a really sweet opportunity to spot lethal. And I think, TJ, you have the clip in front of you, so why don't you go ahead and break it down?
Yeah, it's was round number 4 of the Europe Playoffs Swiss rounds between Casey and Saihodo. It was a back-and-forth game with Even Shaman versus that secret hybrid hunter. And Deathstalker Rexar building zombies is a tough thing to get over in a value game in the late game, especially since Saihodo, as the Even Shaman, did not have access to Hagatha to try and get his own additional value. But Lich King was able to get him Frostmourne, like you said, and summon a Tundra Rhino, which also let him kill off a Rush Lifesteal Zombies that sort of gave him one big board swing. But since it was a back-and-forth game and the whole game was basically fighting for board for both players, Casey was still at a high life total as the Hunter player. But Saihodo, with the Tundra Rhino, was able to get a Flame Totem and put Casey down to 23. He tapped at Argent Commander with the Flame Totem on board, and I was watching chat. There was a couple people that saw the Hex lethal. 1 or 2. But everybody was saying it's 1 damage off lethal.
Me in chat, by the way.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Great job, Dan.
Thank you.
But even Raven and Derek were trying to figure it out. Is it 1 off lethal? But went off face with his minions, hexed the Lynx that was next to the Flamething Totem, which, of course, the Hex Frog is a beast, and the Tundra Rhino gave it charge to be able to push for that lethal damage.
Oh, yeah, it was great. Having the Frog get the finishing blow, and then, the fact is, it's a team effort. Flame Totem gives the buff. Lich King gives the weapon to summon it back. Tundra Rhino gives it the charge. It was a really cool spot. And, granted, I think a lot of people might look at the game context and think, oh, Saihodo made mistakes prior to that. But what's important is how you finish, in a game of Hearthstone. And, yes, a lot of people can make mistakes, but you try to pull yourself out. And I think being able to spot these unconventional opportunities for lethal or a really cool line of play is actually a well-played moment, TJ. So I think it was a great choice. And, we could have picked a lot of them, but I think that was my favorite one.
Yeah, and it's a flashy play, and it's a little bit of surface, right? Sometimes we go super deep with the well-played moment. We get things that are big setups or
Right.
things that are unconventional lines of play. But every once in a while, we just like to be reminded why Hearthstone's a cool, flashy game. And lethals like this are what get those exciting moments, or make those exciting moments even cooler when players are able to capitalize on it. So for those reasons, Dan, that you mentioned and that I mentioned, that's why this was our well-played moment.
And with that, well, you want me to say well played?
Yeah.
Well played.
No! You're supposed to coordinate it with the movement of my mouth. Watch.
Okay. Well played.
All right. We'll practice that.
Sorry, we have a little desync here, TJ.
We're getting there. Little desync. Dan and I are in the same room.
Maybe we just mouth a bunch of nonsense like those old bad kung fu dubbed movies.
Yeah.
Where you're saying like 50 words, but it's like a 5-word sentence translated.
Dan, you're my translator. Sometimes I need it.
Oh, yes. Sometimes I definitely need that too. All right, let's go into meme history, TJ.
Mm-hmm.
The first meme history of the year. And this one is a classic that ends up being used fairly often, even to this day. So what do we have for all of the people on this episode of Meme History?
On today's edition of Meme History, we'll discuss the origins and stories behind You Should Have Played Around It.
It's a good one. See, this is a one-liner that a lot of people used to say very unironically, and like many good memes, became a sarcastic, ironic statement when they use it very tongue-in-cheek. Should have played around. It was originally used as a line to, as a saying to express that you could have done something different within your control, and it was a way for people to communicate that yes, there are moments where like the luck factor may kick in, or whether or not an outcome from drawing a card or a knife jug or a Ragnaros hit was like the important thing. But people always say, you know what? You had the opportunity to play around that card by accounting for the worst possible scenario and then adapting to it. But, it was starting to be said so often to the point where people said should have played around it, but it was like something that's almost literally impossible to account for. So, when Unstable Portal in the back in the day, which was a 2-mana spell that said add a random minion to your hand and it costs 3 less. It's like it was just like a wild possibility. Could it be a charge minion, a taunt minion, a one that dealt damage directly, a one that cleared the board with AoE? And people's like, I don't know how to play around this card, and it kind of became a very tongue-in-cheek moment where it's like, Death Grip into Archbishop Benedictus into stealing your Stone Tusk Boar into doing like this crazy lethal. Should have played around it, and people just started using it very ironically at that point. So at this point, I think whenever someone says should have played around it, I actually think that it's never been used seriously for the past like year or two.
It's hard for us to find the origins of who was the first to use you should have played around it ironically. Yeah. But as all good historians do, we can wildly speculate about the true origins. Could it have been Hearthstone superstar Kripparrian who was the first to use it ironically? Or perhaps the mayor of the long-lost kingdom of Valuetown, Trump, who may have been the first to use it? We may never know, but one thing's for certain.
Reyna will claim ownership of it.
Yes, and it is a dank meme.
That's right. It's one that's really old. I mean, we even have some clips from like the well-played moments over the episode TalkStone that showcase that, right? Like when the Stormbringer summoned the Gunspire turret and then Volcano for lethal. Like you should have played around it.
Should have played around it.
Yeah, like that's when you can use it. So a lot of people, use that as a way to kind of have fun because, sometimes there's just ridiculous moments in Hearthstone that you can't account for, which is why we love it and sometimes hate ourselves for it.
Yeah.
But it's definitely part of the charm of the game, and it comes out every now and then, and that's when you drop the very fiery one-liner in chat with proper capitalization and a period at the end. Should have played around it.
Or perhaps the next time your opponent plays Gilded Gargoyle on 3 and 4 and kills them, and then double coins out a Xerx's Cloning Gallery on turn 7, and double Mind Blast you for 40 damage in the face, you can tell yourself you should have played around it.
So I hear what you're saying, TJ, but that example in itself, you can actually counterplay those scenarios by using things like Nerubian Relver to make spells cost a little bit more, or you can have people fill up hands so that way they can't utilize their space. Some people are playing like King Mukla, for example, to fill up their opponent's hands so that way they overdraw certain things. Or we have seen this past couple weekends that Mojo Master Zihi, when utilized against combo decks, can be really powerful. And then, of course, people are ignoring classes like Shaman and Mage, which have the polymorph effect to transform things like the Gilded Gargoyle to deny the spell and also dilute their pool of resurrects so that even... All right, well, that does it for this episode of TalkStone. You may have noticed that we have a bit different schedule as we get ready for the new competitive system launching after the World Championship. So the next time you'll be seeing us is in March after the Winter Championship, TJ.
Yeah.
That's right. We had one since the beginning of the year, but we're spacing out a little bit more. But it's still really fun. I kind of like that we had so much to talk about in this episode. There's a lot of meat to this entree.
A lot of meat and potatoes.
Yeah.
And we didn't even get to the potatoes. Didn't have time.
That's right. We didn't have time.
But we'll save that for the next episode of TalkStone. Something to look forward to.
I always look forward to TalkStone. It's really fun.
I always look forward to potatoes.
Yes. Yes. I know you love food, TJ. If you guys like the meat and potatoes of this episode and you missed any part of it, you can check out all of our content. We stream it live on twitch.tv/playhearthstone. Make sure to check out the Winter Championships, February 28th to March 3rd. And again, our next episode will be after the Winter Championship, which will recap everything and perhaps preview some things to come. Thanks for watching this episode of TalkStone. You can find TalkStone at twitch.tv/playhearthstone, 6 p.m. Pacific on Wednesdays. And you can also find the audio version on SoundCloud, iTunes, and Google Play. For all things competitive Hearthstone news and analysis, make sure to check out playhearthstone.com/esports. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the tavern.